Okay, hello everybody. Today we're here to talk about our fundraising project for the PANETA COVID-19 initiative. In our group is Esther, Julia, Jennifer, myself, Bailey, and Patricia. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on Tanzania. As mentioned by Lecton Morris in one of his interviews with Anna, the impacts of COVID-19 on the global north are much different than those on the global south. Structural inequities and vast gaps between highly urban and rural communities cause the needs of Tanzanians to vary greatly between these populations. In more urban areas, the focus has been on providing PPEs, most crucially soap and hand sanitizers, as many are still reluctant to wear face coverings. In more rural areas, the focus is on providing increased healthcare service availability, as well as providing education and awareness-raising material focused on stopping the spread of COVID-19. As explained by Wafa et al., in urban communities throughout Africa, health facilities tend to be overcrowded and understaffed, while in rural areas, poor roads and unreliable transport make it difficult for people to access care.
Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to PANETA and what this organization does. The Peri-Urban Ambulatory Nexus of Tanzania is a non-governmental organization formed in 2018 to address and advocate for health and wellness needs within rural Tanzanian communities. PANETA wishes to examine and rectify issues that cause health in the communities they serve to deteriorate within peri-urban areas. Now, peri-urban simply refers to an area of land and the distance between urban and rural that is traveled between two communities. Some of the projects PANETA has developed and worked on include health education and screening, community workshops, and other projects as needed by communities and their people.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about our fundraiser. So our virtual fundraiser is raising money to support the PANETA initiative to help people in Tanzania get access to protective equipment against COVID-19. So the mode of our fundraiser will be a virtual Zumba event hosted by the studio in North Bay. The studio has offered their time to host this event for free on Zoom during one of their classes. So this means the only price for attendees to attend this Zumba event is a donation of your choosing to the PANETA GoFundMe page. The advertisements will be direct participants to contact my email if they're interested in joining the virtual Zumba class. Well, they'll provide proof of donation and I'll give them a Zumba link so they can join on Thursday, November 5th at 7 p.m. The first 5 minutes of the virtual class will be used to introduce PANETA and explain where the funds are going and thanking the studio for being our sponsor. The Zumba class will run for 45 minutes and the last 5 minutes will be available for questions and discussion. So why are we doing our fundraiser? Fundraising is not only about raising money, but also to promote the message and goals of the charity you're fundraising for. So we want to help PANETA get the funds they need in order to move forward with their projects. With greater funds comes the possibility for charity to go global, making their message and goals become more exposed to more people and organizations that can help them achieve their goals. So of PANETA's goals, the two main goals we're focusing on for the purpose of our fundraiser are 1, to support people's knowledge of COVID-19 and educate people on protective materials and how to effectively use them in Tanzania, and 2, aid in the prevention of COVID-19 by supplying materials such as PPE kits to the people of Tanzania.
So we just wanted to take time to break down what personal protective equipment is and why it's important to send some to Tanzania and just the breakdown of the cost. So Sabia, Argentini, Gori, Neri, Loeb, and Fantini discuss in their article how there is already a shortage of PPE for just healthcare workers alone. And although they continue to receive some PPE for their employment to be able to continue doing their job. They cannot imagine the shortage of PPE for individual people to do their daily activities like going to the store and whatnot. According to the South African News and Information website, the first president of Tanzania writes that yes, geographically they are part of East Africa, but geopolitically they are part of South Africa, especially when it comes to statistics. So if we take a look at the live COVID-19 case update per country, the website makes a comparison of the cases in Africa in relation to other countries, as well as the number of deaths and populations. So this website here, if you scroll down, it changes every day, but typically South Africa sits at number 10 or 12. Yeah, so it just goes to show like the breakdown of how many cases they actually have currently and how many deaths. And when comparing that to their population, the numbers are very high. And so although those numbers are being reported, not all those numbers are accurate, because if they don't have enough PPE or testing kits, then there could be many cases that go unreported. So just going back to the slide, the breakdown of PPE costs. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, the items that are most needed by people are being raised in price. So we've seen that with toilet paper, paper towel, and of course the PPE. So on Amazon, a pack of 100 disposable medical gloves is priced at $34.89. So when you break that down, it's 35 cents per glove. Again, on Amazon, 50 disposable medical masks is priced at $15.91, breaking it down to 31 cents a mask. And 10 disposable but washable medical gowns is priced at $100, breaking it down to $10 a gown. So this just goes to show the breakdown of what our donations can achieve and how achievable the goal really is. So by receiving at least $200 in donation, we can provide them with, for example, 10 disposable medical masks, 200 disposable medical gloves, and 100 disposable medical masks. On a side note, there are some kits that include things like masks, gloves, and gowns that retail in variation from $10 or more. So if each kit costs $10 and we raise $200, that would be 20 kits that could be donated to families in Tanzania.
The obvious reason for this remote fundraiser is that, well, everybody knows that society is in the middle of a pandemic right now, including Lecton, his colleagues at PANETA, and those in Tanzania we are looking to team up with. Given that collectively we are in this position where space, time, and face-to-face interactions are an issue, the next question becomes, how do we do this as safely as possible while engaging as many people as we can? When one looks at the best tools for both the task and the context, social media and video conferencing were the best means we could find for both promotion and staging of our Zumba event.
So now, utilizing the Q² model, we will be talking about our message, compassion. During the pandemic, everyone needs PPE and education on how to utilize PPE. Also, due to isolation during the pandemic, we wanted to focus on physical activity and mental health. Understanding. By becoming international partners, we can help PANETA allocate PPE and educate people on how to use PPE. COVID-19 has resulted in an increased risk to mental health alongside a lack of physical activity. Respect. We respect our international partners and wish to extend PANETA's reach, us acting as an extension of their voice rather than speaking for them. Empathy. Everyone deserves to be healthy and safe, mentally and physically, in the rural context or in non-rural areas. So now we will be looking at the second half of the Q² model, consequences. Without PPE and education on how to utilize PPE, a community is at risk and lives are in danger. Without focusing on mental health and physical activity, people are more likely to suffer during the pandemic. Urgency. Prevent the spread of COVID-19. It poses a risk to the elderly, the immune compromised, and those with medical conditions. with there being no vaccine readily available at the moment. There is also limited PPE to begin with in the international context. Negason and Manukula state that Africa is at a higher risk for the introduction and spread of the novel coronavirus disease 2019. Additionally, Negason and Manukula point out that within the African continent, most countries have weak healthcare systems, including inadequate surveillance and laboratory capacity, scarcity of public health, human resources, and limited financial means. Moreover, there are multiple health challenges that include rapid population growth, increased movement of people, existing endemic diseases, re-emerging infections and pathogens, and increasing incidence of non-communicable diseases. Within the Canadian context, mental health difficulties are continuing to persist due to the pandemic alongside lack of activity contributing to mental health difficulties. In a report conducted by the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH, COVID-19 is having a negative impact on Canadians' mental health, with many seeing their stress levels double since the onset of the pandemic. Additionally, a survey of Canadians reported that 50% experienced worsening mental health. What is our response? Helping raise funds for PPE will assist PANETA in their efforts to stop the spread. Zumba has a twofold impact of helping people physically and mentally. Empathy. Working with PANETA will help our community and theirs. We have a chance to engage our community in something beneficial for their mental and physical well-being through a virtual fundraiser that will also help raise funds for PPE.
So how did we come to this idea? So essentially, as mostly mentioned in the cure model that Jennifer just spoke of, it was important to remember that these three thoughts were our main incorporation for the ideal activity. So that is that it animates positive mental health, it encourages fitness and remaining active, and lastly, it's the international partnership. So we knew it was important to incorporate these three components because of the way this pandemic is structured. So we took most of our personal struggles and thoughts from the past couple months during this pandemic and decided that doing something that was good for mental health was key to finding the perfect fundraiser idea. That is when we began brainstorming on different ideas, including virtual cooking classes and so forth. However, we collectively decided that Zumba met all of our expectations outlined above and more. So why is Zumba the perfect fit? Zumba is a simple exercise activity that includes positive and upbeat music, followed by what seems to be some dancing. The perfect addition to this is that everyone can participate at their own pace and rhythm. This is excellent because not everyone is at the same fitness level or at the same self-esteem level as one another. So however, I can guarantee that participating in one class will leave you feeling energized, enthusiastic, and in a better mental health state, or at least that has always been my experience and the experience of those who have participated in Zumba classes. In addition to this, Zumba is an activity that can be done by the entire family, including children and adults, because this activity is meant to be completed at everyone's level of expertise, so to speak. So this being said, the event happens at 7 o'clock at night on a Thursday. We're going to the weekend, so parents can participate in this activity with their kids, let them burn some energy, especially when the nights are getting darker and the nights are getting colder. It's a way for family and children to spend time together, to burn some of that energy, and to be active. And even if you don't have kids or you're not a parent or you're living on your own, this is just something good to take away from, sitting on your couch or doing cleaning, just to take some time to do some good for you and some good for others.
Okay, so our project logistics, and that's our budget. So the North Bay Studio has agreed to sponsor our event by hosting a free Zumba class to the proceeds, a Zumba class, so that the proceeds will go to our PANETA fundraiser. Our event will be advertised on social media and the cost will be free. So our timeline. Our group has been meeting through Google Meet to discuss our fundraiser. All members have been freely engaged, open-minded, and ready to discuss the project. Every member has been participating fully, whether it is through sharing ideas or meeting up with Anna. As for our roles and responsibilities, Julia took on the role of calling the studio and making sure they can sponsor our fundraiser. Jennifer took on the role of creating posters and making advertisements. Bailey came up with the fundraiser idea, and she also met up with Anne and discussed about the idea to make sure we're all on the right path. Patricia took on the time to write out the outline, and Alex helped by editing and correcting any errors. I created the PowerPoints, and both me, Julia, Jennifer, and Patricia made an appointment with Anna to discuss our next step. Julia took the initiative of recording a summary of the meeting and sharing it with those that did not make it to the meeting. For Part A content, Alex started off explaining the impact of COVID-19 has had on Tanzania and Africa in general. Patricia explained what PANETA is, who they are, and their mission. Julia gave the description of our virtual proposed fundraiser, explaining how the fundraiser will be delivered. Bailey gave us the breakdown of PPE. Patricia told us about our audience for our fundraiser. Alex and Jen followed up with a copy of the virtual fundraiser and explained our fundraiser's message using the QR model, which will be shared on various social media platforms. For Part B, which is a critical reflection, I'll be discussing the delivery of an international project directed at an organization located in the Global South under COVID-19. Bailey will follow up by critically reflecting on the opportunities and potential areas of our fundraiser. Next, Jennifer will discuss the message and why it is important to our fundraiser. Julia will reflect on the accessibility of our fundraisers mode and message. Lastly, Alex and Patricia will draw on the anti-oppressive social work framework. They will discuss the steps needed to send our message to our audience while taking into account the unequal power dynamic between the global south and the north. So for our fundraiser event, the date will be, our virtual Zoom event will be held on Thursday, November 5th at 7 p.m. by Zoom, hosted by the studio. We have created a Facebook event page for our fundraiser that anyone can access. This page holds information on our event, why we are doing it, and how people can donate to access our virtual Zumba class link. The GoFundMe link will also be posted on the Facebook page event. As Julia discussed in the beginning of this presentation, people who are interested in attending our virtual Zumba night fundraiser will be sent the PANETA GoFundMe link and asked to contribute a donation of their choosing to gain access to our virtual Zumba class link. During the event, there will be a brief introduction on PANETA and our message, following a 45-minute Zumba session and a question or discussion period at the end. Delivery of an international project. According to Stram, critical reflection is our ability to look for assumptions about social relations of practice, including how power is created in relationships with others. She states that it is useful in understanding our work within a broader social perspective. Social workers who are interested in working with the Global South must understand that it will not be the same as working in the Western world. Some of the social workers who are already working in the Global South have expressed the need for more investment in social care and social community development as a key theme. They expressed that in many countries, the virus outbreak exposed weaknesses in underfunded and undervalued social services. Listening to Leighton's video expressed the need for more PPE and suggested bringing awareness as to why people need to take COVID-19 seriously. He states that some people don't even care and will just walk around without a mask. He mentioned that there are poor health facilities, the gap between rural areas and urban areas, and mothers dying due to health issues. Social workers in this situation will have to do more than just give PPE materials, as there's lack of education and lack of access to the internet. A social worker might need to take a step back first to reflect on how they can deliver services and how best people can benefit from it. White saviorism. It is not about individual intentions, but impact. Its impact is the continued dehumanization and colonial infantilization of over 1 billion Africans. The white savior complex can be traced back to the racist brutality for colonialism. For example, celebrities like Stacey, Ed Sheeran, Madonna have all been accused of using their celebrity status to push a charitable image of themselves. Usually, these images and videos are accompanied by tears. However, many feel that this is problematic as it adds to the idea that Africa and other poor parts of the world are vast barren lands, teething with poverty when there are other true narratives. We need to remember that our actions are always framed within position of power and privilege. Looking back at the week 2 content, we watched the video The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi. He states that many Westerners define African countries through a single story of poverty. People in the global north are always ready to feel sorry for people in the global south, even before they could see them. She calls it a single story of catastrophe, a single story of Africa. There are consequences to creating a single story, showing people as only one thing. The consequences of this single story is that it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. In the video Tanzania Immersion, Ola asks viewers to reflect back and think of what image comes to their mind when they hear the word Tanzania. Is it poor villages, vacation sites? What if we looked at the other side of the story? For future references, social workers need to note down the importance of reflecting on the nature and practice of social work and how the profession might be better prepared for a similar situation in the future. According to Banks and her colleagues, the experience of the pandemic highlighted the importance of community-based and voluntary support networks in a neighborhood and communities of interest and identity, and the role of social workers and community development workers in facilitating these networks. Both Stram, Anna, and Ola have talked about critical reflection and why it is important. Social workers must engage in reflective processes of ethical deliberation to work out what might be the right, although difficult, action, taking time to consider what social work values and principles are at stake before deciding what to do in a particular case. Consider if a decision that might be ethically right in normal times, such as prioritizing service user choice or confidentiality, might now be regarded as ethically wrong, since heightened risk means principles of service user welfare or the public good have to come first. Remain ethically vigilant. That is aware of the impact of exhaustion and emotion on social workers' capacity to see the full ethical implications of a situation and the ability to treat people with respect, empathy, and compassion.
So next, we're going to discuss the opportunities and barriers of this fundraising project. So Burhan indicates that many COVID-19 cases are not being reported in Africa because of a lack of testing abilities, as well as the lack of equipment and hospital beds to aid those in critical condition. In addition to this, he also writes throughout the article that the rates of COVID-19 cases are underestimated and are anticipated to be much higher than reported, especially with their lack of personal protection and equipment. So this is an opportunity for us to exude the importance of helping out Tanzania and become international partners by aiding them. They always say that you treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, what if Canada was in this situation and we needed supplies from another country? Like what occurred between the States and Canada at the beginning of the pandemic about them threatening to stop giving us their supplies that we supplied material for. We work in uniform in our World Trade Department that trades and benefits from products across the world. So we need to continue helping one another. Burhan also indicates that the expected COVID-19 deaths in Africa are expected to exceed 3.3 million. Maybe if they had the proper PPE for those conducting the tests and for those in the community, they would be safer to conduct them and be safer to commute within their community. So just because this is the expected amount of deaths that they're expecting in Africa because of COVID-19 doesn't mean we can't prove them wrong. And lastly, for the opportunities, Nelson and Greeny and Scooter indicate that virtual reality technology typically increases individuals' empathy and can influence people towards positive behavior, especially with donations. So this, of course, works in benefit of the fundraiser, as it is a simple process to donate through the GoFundMe page, and everyone has experienced a shortage of PPE and understands the importance of having it during the pandemic and might be more willing to donate and even get something out of it by participating in the Zumba class. Moving towards the barriers, Nelson et al. Also indicates that in their study, that they conducted, they found that although the rates of donations and participation were high in both virtual and in-person fundraisers, individuals indicate that they prefer to participate in person for fundraisers because they have the higher sense of participation. So it feels like, so essentially what they're saying is that if they're donating something and there's a fundraiser for it, they would rather get out of the comfort of their home and actually be present in the fundraiser. However, although this study says that this is what most people indicated, this could have been, their minds could have been changed with the increase in COVID-19 cases. This is even very present in North Bay as the cases are rising in a smaller community that we've always said was doing really well with the COVID-19 cases. Now they're increasing. So although this article does emphasize that people want to participate in person, I think we can also look at it from the other perspective and say maybe that's not the case anymore, but both points are still relevant. And lastly, for the barriers, although we are asking for donations to participate in this event to help raise funds for PPE equipment for Tanzania, we have not reached out to those communities to participate themselves. So this could be seen as a barrier because we are doing a fundraising event for Tanzania without even including those we are fundraising for. So typically you try to include those that you are fundraising for within the fundraiser to kind of allow people to understand where they're coming from, although this is not something we have done or can really do at this point.
Now we will be critically reflecting on our message and the three main points. So the first one being social work in the international context. Dominelli points out that international social work remains to be a gray area with ambiguities arising around the administration of services. And inappropriate support for local communities and the Western notion of social work result in being problematic in the global South. International interventions have been used to perpetuate oppressive practices of imperial powers, foster capital relationships in societies that are traditionally non-capitalist, and suppress indigenous voices and cultures. Due to the exploitative capacities of international efforts towards the global South, they remain suspicious to the goodwill gestures of Western societies. Now we will be talking about social work in the rural context. Rural Canada and rural Tanzania both experience limitations to their medical infrastructure. According to Ebenhart and Hammock, rural populations fare worse on many dimensions of health compared with populations at other levels of urbanization. Lastly, mental health and exercise during COVID-19. Isolation linked to severely impacting mental health. Ashtabula and Jackson state social isolation associated with quarantine can be a catalyst for many mental health sequelae, even in people who were previously well. These can include acute stress disorders, irritability, insomnia, emotional distress, and mood disorders, including depressive symptoms, fear and panic, anxiety and stress because of financial concerns, frustration and boredom, loneliness, lack of supplies, and poor communication.
So our fundraiser reaches out to people who have access to social media platforms we're advertising on, have a high-speed internet, and are able-bodied. So thinking about our mode and message, our fundraiser mode is not very accessible to those who do not have access to high-speed internet, have any physical limitations, are not interested in Zumba, or are not present on social media. So anyone with impaired hearing or sight, a physical disability, or intellectual and developmental disabilities may be excluded from our fundraiser mode due to a lack of accessibility that a virtual event may carry. Also, going virtually is probably a limitation for those in Tanzania to interact. As we have seen with Lecton, his connection to Zoom calls is not the strongest. And because he has access, it does not imply that all Tanzanian citizens have access to the internet and funds to participate.
Okay, as we all know, the first step in addressing the inequity that we talk about between the global north and the global south is the acknowledgement that a faulty power dynamic even exists, and the privilege that those of us on this side of the project have derived from it. Our Tanzanian PANETA colleagues present an interesting case in point. As medical students, there's a certain level of prestige attached to the title. However, despite having privilege on one level, there is inequity on the level of the need to have a fundraiser in the first place, in spite of the position they hold. It isn't our place to make assumptions on the competence of our Tanzanian colleagues. We aren't the knights riding in on our horses to save anyone, and our fundraiser isn't being done with that in mind. It's always been said that our clients are the best experts on their own lives. Even from this point of view, there is truth to that statement. We have tools. Of course, we can teach our colleagues how to use them. An important part to that is that in being teachers, we also have to be students at the same time. We know little of the cultures in Tanzania. Perhaps some grounding in that area would help us better tailor our responses to the needs of the community.
Okay, so anti-oppressive framework, power dynamics, and critical reflexivity. Social work on the international level is complex due to its historical colonial legacy. Notions of development are centralized around Western worldviews and values. It is essential that we keep in mind the structural inequities that have been caused by these historical colonial legacies. As social workers, we must conduct ourselves in the international context in a manner that alleviates hardships and aims to foster social justice in our field. Reflection, reflective practice, and critical reflection are all key components in reflective practice that's ultimate goal is to facilitate international social work in an anti-oppressive way. We must personally reflect upon our own power and social location and how this shapes our relationships with others. As social workers, it is essential that we are using reflective practice not only to reflect upon our own thoughts and actions, but also to critically attend to the underlying power and dominance of macro structures. This is especially important when working in the international context, as a great deal of these power imbalances are implicitly experienced in our everyday lives. Our efforts to be constantly reflexive in our practice are essential in framing our own power within the helping relationship, as well as alerting workers to the need to resist domination, exploitation, and oppression due to larger structural entities such as capitalism, neoliberalism, and patriarchy. When working internationally, we must challenge our own Northern expertise and allow those we are aiming to assist to share their knowledge and expertise, thusly becoming our teachers as well. And lastly, here are just a couple models for critical reflection. The Borton what, so what, now what model, and the Gibbs reflective cycle, which is description, feelings, evaluation, analysis, conclusion, and action plan. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit with critical reflexivity in your practice. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. And of course, if anyone has any comments or questions, please reach out to the group via email or Blackboard.